and failing, while we talk about it as being this grandiose thing you need to do, and it's so good nowadays, it still sucks when you fail. It's not fun to admit you failed. It's not fun when you go out and you try something and it doesn't work.
Welcome back to Worldie Unboxed, the Founders Edition. This week, we're kicking off an exciting two-part episode with Conor Ryan, one of the brilliant minds behind xplate, a company transforming how we approach fitness and recovery through innovative technology. Conor started his career in marketing with a clear vision to one day step into the world of entrepreneurship. In part one, we dive into his journey from marketing professional to co-founder, exploring how his background shaped the creation of xplate and the lessons he's learned along the way. We'll discuss the challenges of building a brand in the fitness space, as well as the inspiration behind their cutting-edge products. Stay tuned for part two, where Aaron and I will break down the highlights of the conversation with Conor and reflect how his entrepreneurial journey connects with our work at Worldie. For more, visit worldiebrand.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel for episode highlights and exclusive content. All right, let's talk to Conor.
Can you just walk us through your background and basically how you got interested in entrepreneurship initially?
Yeah, so I don't have your standard background that goes into entrepreneurship. I grew up with a father who's a patent attorney, so I've always heard, him tell me, you're not going to build wealth in your 9 to 5. You're going to build wealth by creating something, whether that's a patent, whether that's an idea or a business. And so I always knew that in the back of my mind that, hey, if you want to create true generational wealth or freedom, you really need to build and create something that's valuable. And so I started out in advertising. It was not the conventional way to go build something, but I really enjoyed the creative process, and I really enjoyed also being involved in working with multiple clients and across different brands. So I did that for about 8 years, worked with brands including Walmart, UPS, Rolex, also with some smaller ones, but really saw how these large brands function and how they build brand and also communicate their value to the world. And then I decided to transition kind of out of burnout plus needing to move back or wanting to move back to the West Coast. And I ended up at a mobility startup. Most people call it a scooter startup, Lime, that had just raised a significant amount of money when the capital faucet was fully open in San Francisco back in like 2018. And that was my first taste into the startup and entrepreneurial world. I joined as a marketer, a marketing manager, but really got a taste of operations, working across, business strategy, business development, and seeing what it takes for a emerging business to successfully operate and especially successfully scale across not only domestic markets, but global markets. And so I was there for a little bit until, unfortunately, the pandemic hit and really hit mobility companies hard. They essentially, all the revenue was shut off. And so after that, I went and worked at Pinterest and then I went back into the startup world at an tech or education technology company, and had just raised money as well, Series B, and went a little smaller and realized how much more fun I was even having in a smaller startup and really being a part of the growth and development there. And so after that, I really started thinking about how can I start a business and what is it that I can create that's of value? And it became more of a person, or I became pursuing. I wanted to pursue that more as soon as I had seen what it takes for these smaller businesses to succeed.
And so we talked to a lot of founders who have different startup experiences before they do their own thing, and they start to piece together what works, what doesn't work, and they kind of come up with a thesis in terms of maybe it's just a checklist of 3 to 5 things that they would need to see in a startup or having their own startup in order to feel like, yeah, this is a worthwhile opportunity. So What were some of those key things that you learned in your experience that you felt like any startup that you joined or created, you kind of had to see those things be a part of it?
I think number one is people. I think you'll hear a lot of people say product, but I really do believe that the success of a lot of startups is based on the people. And you see it now too in a lot of the film recaps and movies and shows they've created around like Uber, for instance, and Travis's personality and the WeWork story. And I really do believe that it comes down to a lot of times the people who are building it and the vision they have. And on the, secondly, then the product. I think market fit and market environment is also very important. And I think a lot of times too, luck. So for instance, with Lime, it was a time where Uber was really booming, but there's this shift in wanting to move away from cars, wanting to move away from wanting to move forward to more pedestrian focused and safer streets. And Lime was right there with the perfect solution, which was bikes, scooters, and other modes of electric mobility. And they're at a time where capital was very available, and it gave them a runway to survive the pandemic, for instance, and become a sustainable business now post pandemic. And I think so having the people plus the product plus market fit, a little bit of luck on your side, gives you a great foundation to turn your idea into a fully functioning business.
So let's talk about product. What is xplate? What's that product? How'd you get that idea? How's it different from other solutions already on the market?
I'm going to try not to ramble here because it being a novel product, I think we've gone down a couple different routes of how we communicate this. But the way I would break xplate down in the most simple form is it's a compact, portable, multifunctional fitness system that includes the kettlebell, double kettle, straight bar, and easy curl bar in one modular unit with 3 adjustable weights for each handle. And so when you think about it, it's really the first free weight fitness product that you can take anywhere with you and work out in hundreds of different ways. And, it was inspired by the 45-pound plate, which you'll find in pretty much every gym across America. But what you don't find is consistency in how that plate is manufactured. So some have handles, some don't. Some are made of have a plastic silicone coating. Others are just cast iron, and they're really not available to take with you on the go or have in your apartment. It would look pretty strange on your wall. And I should say, my co-founder invented a solution that breaks that 45-pound plate down into multiple different handles and units, but also into one unit where the handles are adjustable, the weights are adjustable, and it's easy to break down so you can put into a Pelican case, for instance, on the go.
And you mentioned kind of some of the difficulties in explaining your value proposition. And we've run into the same issue where we're like, do we want to make it super short? Do we want to make it super long? Because you always have people when you do the short pitch that they're like, I just don't get it. And then when you do the long pitch, people are like, that's way too long. So how did you guys get to where you are today in terms of that value proposition? And do you have any recommendations for early stage entrepreneurs who might be struggling with that same problem of not necessarily knowing how to lock in that value proposition, or at least the communication of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult when you have a novel product that, for instance, when you see our product on paper or on a screen without any demonstration of it doesn't make much sense, especially to somebody who's maybe not as familiar with fitness or doesn't exactly know what a kettlebell handle looks like. So it's for us, a lot of times it was going out and demonstrate. It was building a prototype, first of all, that we could then go out and demonstrate and really collect feedback. And I think that's the thing that is most important, is listening to the customer, and rather than you trying to tell the customer. And as soon as we got the prototypes into people's hands, as soon as we started, going out there and asking questions, we really were able to develop a stronger value proposition for why you want to buy this, especially in such a complex space, a very crowded space. There's so many different at-home fitness products, for instance, right? Everybody's talking about, ours is revolutionary or the first of its kind. But when it comes down to it, people can still buy at all these different weights and all these different, multifunctional at-home workout systems. And so once we got out there, we asked the questions, we got it in people's hands. We really were able to more clearly communicate and articulate what that value proposition is, especially when it came to who our target is. And it takes time. It takes iterations. It takes time. And I'm sure it's going to change as we continue to grow and as we continue to get this out there into new markets, new people, and new places.
Yeah. And you might have already thought about something like this, but I was just looking at your website and it looks like there's 5 different kind of like forms or configurations. So you could even do something like, 5 forms, 10 different weights, countless exercises. And that's like, I mean, especially if you have a visual, maybe that's an easy way to communicate it to people like me who know something about working out, but maybe don't know a ton about your product already. But that's just an idea. Do you guys have any kind of patents on, because you were mentioning before your dad was kind of saying, or maybe you were saying yourself, like a easy way to kind of generate value with the business is by having a patent. So do you guys have a patent on this? Are you looking into getting one or no?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to have my father, who's a patent attorney, and heard about it every day of my life, about the importance of filing a patent if you have an idea before you go out there and you start talking about it or you start talking to manufacturers. And so as soon as Austin decided to move forward with this idea, and I can go more into how we got to that place as well, we filed a provisional. So essentially what that does is that gives you a year. You get the provisional in, you're protected. It's not a formal patent, so there are still liabilities there, but at least it gives you time to decide on if you're willing to invest in going through the formal patent filing process, and does give you some protection. So you can go start talking to investors, you can go start talking to manufacturers, you can start promoting it publicly, knowing you can put patent pending on that and defend yourself if need be. But since then, we've then filed a more formal or a formal patent. We're going through the examination process right now. So once you get that patent filed, it goes into the U.S. Patent Office. You're assigned an examiner, and they're going to essentially question the heck out of it and try and make sure that what you're filing is not breaking any other patents. It is novel. It is unique enough to file it for. And a lot of times they're going to reject a handful of your ideas that over time you can continue to file again. But it is a very time consuming practice. It's not cheap either. So I think that's the other challenge that a lot of inventors and founders have is, being willing to invest what it takes. But in the end, once you have that patent, you have something of value, you have something of defensibility that no one else has. So you could sell that patent. You can obviously threaten to defend yourself with that patent. You can also be threatened by other people. But I would, coming from the background of being related to a patent attorney, it is such a critical function, a critical piece to have if you are going to manufacture something, for instance, or if it is, an idea that you think is worth selling at some point.
And how did you meet the founder? Because you mentioned that the founder came up with this initial idea. So how'd you meet him, and what's your role currently with xplate?
Yeah, so Austin and I met, I don't even know how many years ago, but we had a mutual friend, very close friend of mine, and I was actually living up in the mountains in Utah during the pandemic, hunkered down in a ski lease, and Austin came out to visit us for a weekend, and Austin and I were sitting down having a beer one night, and he's a very idea driven guy. He's an engineer at heart, went to UC Davis for his engineering degree, has since worked in the spinal um, implant industry, and is just the kind of person who's looking at problems and coming up with solutions. And so he's got idea books, he's got papers, lots of journals and pieces of paper with all of his things written out. And one night we were just, having a beer. He's sharing ideas with me, and I was like, you know what, you should talk to my dad. He'll give you the family and friends free hour or two to bounce some ideas around and decide if anything's worth pursuing. And so Austin got connected with my dad, pitched him his top ideas, and my dad pretty much said, I think you got one that won't require significant investment or won't be a threat to any large corporations who'd be willing to take you on. So that idea was eventually xplate, and he and I, as soon as he decided to pursue a provisional patent, he and I were just bouncing ideas around. I coming from the marketing background, I had all sorts of ideas on how he could eventually launch this and how he could start building awareness. And one day he was like, you know what, why don't you just come do this with me if you've got the time? And I was starting to, this is right around when I wanted to create my own company and become a business owner and learn what it takes to do that. And so it was kind of a natural fit.
So are you kind of like the CMO? Is that the role that you're filling?
Yeah. So co-founder, CMO, I really don't like titles early on at a company. I know there's somebody who has to be CEO, for instance, when you're talking to investors and when you start to bring on, once you start to hire people. We have not hired anybody formally yet. It's four of us co-founders. So I would say we all have this, and we don't have any specializations in terms of what our titles are, but I think we each bring on different skill sets and knowledge that help complement each other.
Got it. And when we talked last, I think you were still in your last job. So are you kind of planning to continue to do this on the side while working a 9 to 5? Are you planning on doing this full time for a bit? Has your thinking on that changed at all since the last time we talked?
Yeah, I'm in a bit of a gray area right now where I am not working a 9 to 5. I am working on xplate pretty significantly. I'm also working on a couple other small business ventures that I support as kind of side hustles, and I've explored this idea of going and becoming my own marketing consultant and launching some sort of a formal consulting offering. I'm also interviewing and exploring both full-time and contract roles. So I would say I'm at this place in my career where there's a lot of different divergences I could go down. There's not only a Y in the road, there's a tree in the road. And so I would love to be able to pursue xplate or pursue any sort of entrepreneurial business full time in the future. I think the challenge right now for me and for xplate is how do we turn this into a full-time business so that we can pay ourselves a salary? And is there the ability to sell enough of these or to sell other products on top of these that we can take it full-time?
So, given that, do you guys have a sense of, well, I guess the first question is, who's the target customer? And do you have a sense of how many people like that there are in the US or whatever market that you're planning to launch in?
Yeah, I would say our target persona that we've kind of honed in on is this person who's limited with time, but recognizes the importance of fitness in their life. And, we've really kind of gone back and forth about whether do we really nail down the target demo to say it's a 35-year-old male who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles and pays $3,000 a month and makes, $200,000 a year and has all these passions? Or do we kind of go a little more ambiguously at first and say, hey, it could be a mom, it could be a single male, but they're limited time. They're obviously busy with a career. They might have kids, social commitments. They've got passions and hobbies, but they recognize the importance of fitness in their life, and they recognize they need to make time for it, but they have such a busy schedule that often it gets delayed or put to the side or procrastinated on. And so we really want to hone in on how do we target those people? How do we message those people and say, hey, the xplate's only going to cost you $400. It's a one-time cost. And it's going to offer you thousands of different exercises, both strength, cardio, hit. You could even do it. It could even be incorporated into yoga positions, and it can fit anywhere. It can fit in the back of your car. It can fit in your apartment. It could be in your at-home, gym in your garage. It could be in your office. It goes with you, and it's durable and will not can withstand pretty much any weather and any environment. And I'd say we're gonna have in the future, we're gonna have to hone in more on who exactly that person is. We're doing research. We're doing more surveys and trying to build more of that data-driven approach. And the other thing too is like the market, what we've seen in terms of the market size, it's probably like an $11 billion market in the United States for at-home fitness equipment. But it's a little tougher to put a finite number on how many people fit within that market itself. I do think though, if you look at competitors and if you look at the fitness market in general, there is a huge opportunity for us to come in and take market share. I don't think there's a perfectly direct competitor to us. And I do think because what we're selling is so different and combines a bunch of different products into one, we could really take advantage of that.
And kind of going back to that target customer point, do you think it's people who they have a gym membership and they just don't necessarily, they can't get there every day? So on the days that they can't, they want to do something at home. Is it people who only work out from home? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, that's one of the talking points we've approached is, you're going to spend $400 already on a gym membership at least per year. And you're likely not going to use it. I think there's a crazy number out there about like 50% of people who do pay for gym subscriptions don't use them more than once or twice a month. And so it could be a compliment on top of that. It could be the person who does have like a spin membership, but doing spin classes doesn't build strength training. So it can complement that. And it could be also the person who loves their at-home routine and wants this new product in their at-home routine. I think the other thing too is our Kickstarter, we're planning to do a Kickstarter crowdfund. And I think that will also be another key tool for us to learn about who it is that's buying this, who it is that this really resonates with. Since, a lot of what we're having to do right now is go out and predict things versus taking customer data and insights to really drive how it is we message and who it is we communicate to.
Yeah. And we've tried to take that same approach of, to the extent you can, taking a data-driven approach to consumer insights. So what was that process like for you guys? Was it just running surveys? If so, how did you find the survey respondents? Did you pay for this stuff, or were you just doing it for free? Just kind of like walk us through that process.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was mostly friends and family, maybe some coworkers. We promoted a bit on LinkedIn, sent it out to our email contacts, texted friends, and we got a fairly decent response. But I think, as you go through this, you learn a lot. And we just recently launched a new survey where we were like, hey, let's offer a free xplate to any, not to anyone, but to one person who out of the hundreds who take the survey will win a free xplate. And that's kind of like, we want to incentivize people to take the survey. I think, for instance, in my case, I'll rarely take a survey online unless there's some sort of incentive, just because it's going to take up a part of my time. And so we've seen a lot more success by offering one, an incentive to take it. And then two, we've been also promoting it outside of just LinkedIn, promoting it outside of our family and friends. We did some ad testing last summer and built up a subscriber base. We can now promote it to them. We've had other friends share it with their networks, but really wanted to go organically for now. We have not decided to pay for any sort of survey tools or pay for access outside of our social networks and the xplate community at the moment. But the other thing too is, like, you can't beat on the ground immediate feedback. And I think that's where the prototypes really became so valuable, is going to gym owners and going to physical, therapists and personal trainers, the people you'd think this product would immediately resonate with, but then also just doing a pop-up at a park, showing up at local events and seeing the kinds of people who would come and ask questions. And, for instance, like a 65-year-old woman who we never thought would ever want to own a piece of free weight equipment really found it useful and valuable and really was interested, especially given, the two model sizes. And so that one-to-one feedback it's just invaluable. You can't beat that. But I think when it comes to wanting to amass, a larger data set, you really have to rely on surveys. And that's what we're trying to do more as we prepare for our more formal crowdfund launch.
That makes sense. And I agree with you that those kind of like one-on-one conversations, there's just really no substitute for them. They don't necessarily scale because they're just so time intensive. But have there been any other kind of unexpected learnings from that customer discovery process that have made you guys either consider making a bit of a pivot or positioning things a bit differently, or just in any way changing the way you guys are approaching this thing?
It definitely helped us to refine the product. The prototype is not, it's similar in the structure and the overall shape, but there are a lot of design features that changed. I think we realized with the prototype there was some clunkiness, and a lot of times we talk to people and they're like, speed is actually really important, right? Being able to switch the weights up quickly, being able to adjust handles quickly. The other thing too that was interesting was talking to our B2B audience, or a potential B2B audience. So gym owners, studios, places that had existing consumer bases who are using workout products every day. And one of the couple of the most important things were like durability, speed, and cost. And we started to talk to these business owners and got some new ideas about how we could create products that are more B2B focused and not necessarily just B2C. That's been a key insight for us. That's really helped inspire some future product, I shouldn't say changes, but maybe product offerings that we're excited about. That was not, it opened up a new avenue that we hadn't even been thinking about before we started talking to people. So that's the other thing, is you might find new target demos, more new customer bases that you didn't even know exist once you start to go out and talk to people.
That makes sense. And I was going to ask, are you guys, thinking about selling to gyms and things like that? But that answers that question. So there's people who already use home workout equipment. There's all these like tonal, people could just have a kettlebell or a dumbbell. So for someone who already has home workout equipment, what is your pitch to them? How do you communicate why they should be switching to your product?
Yeah, it might not even be a switch. It's an addition, I think, to people who do have that. And you're going to see people who have different types of at-home setups. And what the xplate does is it provides you with 4 different handles, 3 different weights for each handle, right? So 12 different variations that you would have to buy individually if you were going to own them at home. And it easily can be hung on the wall, stored in a closet. It's not going to take up any space. And so we see it as this value add if you do have other workout equipment at home. Okay, cool. Now you have kettlebells. Now you have curl bars available as well. or if you've got a setup that takes up that, your limited space, or you don't want it to look cluttered, we've got a new product for you that adds simplicity and adds these different handles that you might not have had previously. So I would say it's an addition. If you have limited strength options, now you've got 12 strength options all in one product. And if you have limited space or you really don't like clutter, you've got a really simplified workout system that you could hang up easily, or you could put away and nobody would even know.
And you mentioned that there's not really too many competitors in this specific space, like, doing this exact same thing as you guys, but who do you guys view as your competitors in terms of competing just for that, I guess, share of home workout equipment wallet?
Yeah, like one of the big one that really comes to mind is the Bowflex adjustable dumbbells, right? They've got 6 or 7 different weight variations. You put the dumbbell in, you click, and you add another weight. So that's one, but the price point on that is obviously higher than us. That price point's well over $500, where we're trying to stay under $500. And then from another competitive angle is On It, for instance. They sell the kettlebells with different faces on the front of them. So you've seen like the primal faces, and they've got the goblin faces. Was really popular during the pandemic, but you've got to buy each individual kettlebell, for instance. And they also have this hydro bag, which they promote similarly, where it's compact, it's offers lots of different exercises, and you can take it wherever you want, right? You fill it with water, it's very easy to use. So that's an easy direct competitor. However, the value prop is different than us. They're talking about the inertia of water and how water is almost like you're working out against something, whereas we're talking about you have your standard strength tools that you usually find in the gym that are, casted in iron, that you can take with you and have on the go. So those are two big competitors that come to mind. There's a lot of smaller competitors out there you'll find on Amazon, for instance, or TikTok, also crowdfunded. There's one called Flyweight that was recently crowdfunded, and theirs is all about it's a portable cardio edition that gives you the ability to move around weight really quickly while you're working out. But a lot of the things we're competing against are those standard fitness equipment pieces that you find in the gym. So the kettlebell, the curl bar, the plate weight, your standard squat racks, all those kinds of things. We break that down into one product, and we simplify it. We make it more accessible, and we make it easier to use.
That makes sense. And we've talked a little bit about kind of like the patent and how another company can't just, blatantly copy what you guys are already doing. But what are some of the benefits that, even if they do something similar, that you don't think they'll be able to copy? Because they could try to, do just enough different where, they're not infringing on your patent, but try to get some of these same benefits, like, all these different weights and exercises with something compact. But I guess, what are some of the things that you think, in terms of benefits, that they can't really copy even if they try?
Yeah, Austin, we'd be able to go and talk about this for probably an hour. The intricacies of the engineering drawings and exactly what our claims are. But there's a couple things that would resonate most. And one, it's the dovetail joint. So we are, I want to say we're the first fitness product to have a dovetail joint incorporated into its design. And the dovetail joint you often see in wooden furniture, but it's one of the strongest joint formations in the world. And it's you having it within our modular design offers just this immense amount of strength and durability that we can confidently say will never break. There's extremely strong tolerance, and it's actually one of the challenging parts we have with manufacturing, because it is so unique in the way it's being applied to a product like ours. But you're not going to find that elsewhere. The other thing is the adjustable weights. We have a really cool spring-loaded system for the adjustable weights that allows you to adjust them quickly, but also locks it in, so it will not come out. It's going to be practically impossible to remove that adjustable weight without a human hand. And so those two are claims that we can stand by, we can defend, and we can confidently say no one else in the space has ever thought of. And uniquely too is having those dovetails around the outside of the modular center. We can add all sorts of different handles in the future. We can create resistance band. We actually have created resistance bands attachments. There's all sorts of cool ways that we can add and tweak in the future, leveraging that dovetail handle and leveraging that central unit.
Makes sense. And we've talked a little bit about kind of the product today. We've talked about the prototypes that you have, a Kickstarter. So where are you guys in this process? Because I don't think you guys have kind of launched yet, right? So where are you guys in that process?
Yeah, the only thing we've done is launched a probably a month-long pre-sale to people who've expressed interest in being our first customers. So we launched that right before the holiday. Probably not the best timing, but we didn't really have much of a choice there. So we've done that. We got a good response to that. We'll be able to include those pre-sales in our initial production batch. So our approach to this is we've found a manufacturer. They're going through the midst of the tooling, creating the samples. We'll likely receive those samples here in a month or two. Another challenging time of the year where you have the Chinese New Year, which we are manufacturing overseas, which happens in the middle of this. But once those samples come in, we'll be able to review them, play around with them, test them, and then we'll put in the first production batch. And we are actually ordering like 80 to 100 xplates for marketing purposes. We see a really strong value in having the product and being able to get it out there and into influential people's hands. And then those pre-sale customers will also receive their products when we receive ours. So we think that's a cool strategy to start building early ambassadors and early adopters. They can create content for us, they can create testimonials, and they can be the first ones to go out and promote it. And then from there, we're aiming to launch a Kickstarter, crowdfund Indiegogo as well, post Kickstarter. But we see this as a perfect way for us to create initial sales. We think it's a really perfect product fit for crowdfunding. We've received a lot of good feedback from people who are very familiar with the space, and this being a good fit given its multifunctional approach, and then also the price point. And from there, we'll be able to take that revenue, put in a much larger order, and then also invest in inventory and our future e-commerce approach.
So how do you test the product when you're getting these samples, these prototypes? How do you test to make sure that it's actually working the way that you want it to work?
Yeah, Austin's going to go through the ins and outs, I'm sure, of how it was designed. We are the margin on the dovetail connections, for instance, is so thin you pretty much could not fit a piece of paper in between it. So testing out the intricacies of how it was designed and how it was manufactured, I'm sure Austin will be studying the ins and outs of that for the first 48 72 hours, and then getting it into people's hands, getting it out there, throwing it around, taking it to the beach, taking it to environments, and putting it in situations that we envision our customers doing it the same. Pressure testing essentially, and seeing how, for instance, is it affecting is the paint chipping, are the handles staying in position, is everything fitting to the how we envision this. But it's going to be a lot of banging up and getting tossed around.
And how difficult was that process in terms of finding the right manufacturer, kind of communicating the design or manufacturing requirements, all that kind of stuff? Was that an easy process? Was it a hard process? How long did it take? All that kind of stuff.
It's definitely not easy, especially coming from people who have not produced or manufactured overseas. I'd say that's the most challenging part. And you'll hear stories too from other founders. A lot of times they fly over there and get their hands dirty and have to, talk and meet the right people. We had the fortunate ability to work with several professionals in the space. We won a pitch competition, for instance, last year at LaunchBoom's crowdfunded summit that gave us free access to a couple experts who not only work closely with China, but are positioned over there and on the ground often. So they were able to work with us to gather estimates to make sure our engineering drawings were in the right place, and then also think through how we were going to source the materials. I will say though, even having professionals on your side still, until you start working with the manufacturing directly, you really don't know. So, our original timing, we always had these timing estimates, has gotten pushed. Things get in the way. Holidays happen. People overpromise, for instance, and you've got to adjust and learn. So it hasn't been easy. It's had its ups and downs, but we're really thankful for the people we've had who could be on the ground and really work closely with us to help us navigate cultures and intricacies and differences between the manufacturing process here in the United States, and then also the learnings we've had going back and forth with these manufacturers as soon as you get them online.
Have you guys gone to China at all and visited the factory or no?
We have not. We've had the luxury, like I said, of having contacts on the ground. We've also worked with a couple third-party vendors who have can go and visit the factories themselves and report back pretty immediately on how things are going. But I would say, like, these manufacturers have it figured out. They've been doing this for decades now, and it's some of the, for us, when we were exploring manufacturing options in different countries, China's was the easiest and most streamlined manufacturers we had experienced. They've got everything under one roof from soup to nuts, and they do this with so many different companies that are stationed in the United States. And so it really was not as complicated as we expected it to be, but there is still that day difference in time zones that can also throw a wrench into things.
And have you gotten any pushback from people in terms of producing in China?
Not necessarily. I think we have the vision to eventually manufacture in North America, and a lot of that is driven by one, if you ever want to work with a government agency, for instance, and we see a really strong opportunity for our product to work with military divisions, for instance, you have to manufacture here in North America, and there's a very complex process you go through to become an approved vendor. But it's going to require more time and energy to manufacture in North America, and it's also obviously going to be a more costly. So you'll see a lot of companies who do claim made in USA. They do everything under their own roof. We've talked to several fitness companies who do manufacture their product here in the United States, and they have everything under their own roof. They have their own factory essentially, and they own the whole process themselves. So ideally, that would be great if we could do that. Huge investment and huge resource requirement if you're going to do that.
And how expensive has it been so far to basically, develop this product?
We've bootstrapped the whole thing. So our other goal was to bootstrap this through a crowdfund. We have done a little bit of family friends, not a lot. We're probably going to need some more in order to fund our marketing budget. But you can do things affordably. There are ways to take things on yourself. For instance, during the prototype process, Austin was hand building. We've got pictures of him, welding and cutting and putting things together in his garage. And we're then sourcing, he's in San Diego, so he has the luxury of being just across the border from Mexican metal shops. And so he was able to go down there and find really affordable metal shops that he could work with to help to bend metal and do things that he couldn't do in his garage. So we got creative. I should say Austin really got involved hands-on with creating a prototype. And we've also found ways beyond that to launch affordably. And, a lot of times it's building relationships, finding people who can help, finding doors you can open, people who have influence, people who have followings that don't cost you a lot of money in order to build the awareness and take your idea from paper to actual product.
And how much are you guys looking to raise through Kickstarter and Indiegogo?
Ideally 6 figures. We would be ecstatic to hit the $1 million mark. It's extremely rare to see companies do that. I think if we were to get more close to the $400,000 to $500,000 range, that would be a huge raise for us, and it would also provide amazing market validation, and then give us the ability to then be more credible. And when we go talk to potential investors, or if we were to go to the big box retailers, it just immediately validates your product. And so we see that number 100 to 500,000 as the sweet spot to where we can get to. And our dream is to break 1 million.
We're the same way, or at least I'm the same way, where 6 figures would be great, but 7 figures would be even better. And like you said, it's tough. There's not a lot of people who do it, but there are some people who do it. So you might as well, try.
Yeah, you got to shoot for it. And again, it comes, I keep saying it comes down to luck. Hard work earns luck. But I think you've seen out there the ones that go big. For instance, like Lomi is one of the ones that comes immediately to mind. They picked up so much steam. They got all this press. People started getting really excited about not only the product, but the problem it was solving. And all of a sudden, you can see a Kickstarter just go to the moon once it really starts to create buzz.
Yep. You mentioned that your background is kind of in marketing, advertising. You understand brand as well. So what are maybe some out there ideas that you've had in terms of marketing or building the brand? Because it's easier and easier now to start a business. So there's so many businesses out there, which makes it really hard to stand out. So how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, if we had the money and the unlimited resources, we have this fascination and dream of going like the Red Bull approach and creating like the world's craziest fitness challenges and shooting in the most remote locations, and doing an xplate on the bottom of the ocean, or workout on the bottom of the ocean, doing a xplate routine on top of one of the monuments in Utah's Monument Valley, right? Places that you can only access with lots of money and the right people. But what it comes down to, and what I'm learning a lot about when marketing an early product, is finding that sweet spot of where can I spend the least amount of money and get the most amount on my return. And you hear a lot about meta ads, for instance. You hear a lot about people spending money on search and social promotion. But I think it also comes down to where are finding those ambassadors who are going to go out and do the work for you. Finding those people who believe in your product, who believe in your vision, and who want to be a part of the process. I think that's a unique place to play that a lot of companies forget about. It's, how do we go out there and find that person that's going to be essentially an extension to our company that we don't have to pay, and is literally is just in love with the product and loves what we're doing, and also has a relationship with us. I think you're seeing that now too in the community building approach. It's building a relationship with these ambassadors, with your early customers, your early adopters, and then eventually, your longtime customers, and showing them that you're listening to them. You want them to be a part of the product development process. You want them to be a part of your launch process. You want them to be a voice to what you're doing. It's free marketing, and all it takes is just effort. It takes getting out there and talking to them and forming a relationship, staying in touch with them, including them, and empowering them to essentially be a marketing arm for you.
So yeah, I'll try to be quick with the next few questions, but that's interesting what you just said around because you mentioned before finding influencers, and then there's also kind of like just people who like your product. So how do you think about those two different, because one of them is almost top down, right? Like someone who has influence and then they're influencing their audience versus someone who's going to be more of like a grassroots influencer. So they're going to tell their friends, their family, things like that. So how do you think about marrying those two strategies and leveraging those two different groups of people?
Yeah, it's the thing too is fitness is such a an industry that relies on community. I think if you go talk to any fitness studio or gym, it's like number one thing that comes to, that they focus on is their community. And you see a lot of them out there like Soul Cycle and Barry's F45 who have grown off community building. And so I think one, they have the people who have the influence to go out and make their name, right? Their fitness instructors, for instance, or in like F45 has investors who are very influential, like Mark Wahlberg. And so we've taken the approach where, it's important to ensure that our customers feel included, our customers feel supported, they feel like they can reach us, they feel like we are there for them. And then at the same on the flip side of it, it's working with influential people in the space that share either common values, common vision, or a common interest where as we've started to outreach to athletes, for instance, we could go and reach out to the highest followed athlete in the world and say, hey, we'll give you a piece of equity or we'll pay for a post, and hopefully that'll drive a significant amount of awareness. Or we could go out there and say, hey, we really believe that fitness is being neglected right now in society, and we believe it as being this like prescriptive drug, for instance, that can fight all these issues we're seeing across healthcare and physical health. Who else in the space is also trying to solve that? Who else in the space is really involved in that? And I've got this magazine in front of me that has a doctor who's all about that we feel would be a perfect fit for us. He puts on fitness classes across the nation. All he's talking about is using fitness as a prescriptive drug. There's a similar vision there, and right, we can incorporate our product into what he's doing, and he can speak to what we're building. So I think that's the when finding influential partners, where's the mutual connection that you can both work together on? Because for them, then they'll want to promote your product more. They'll want to be involved in the product process more. And then for you, you're going to have a more authentic and genuine, communication and representation of your product being used.
And going back to your idea about kind of like a Red Bull strategy, is there a scrappy way to do that where instead of having someone working out at the top of Monument, like a monument in Monument Valley, maybe they're hiking something in a national park, they have the xplate in their backpack, they take it off, they do some exercises, you film it. Are there ways to do that in a scrappier way, do you think, or no?
There definitely are. We've already done some of it. I did it last year in Arches National Park. It was kind of funny walking around with a tripod set up and this xplate prototype in my backpack, which weighed, I don't even know, 60 pounds. And I would go set up under an arch, take a bunch of shots, and then try and get in my car and run to the next arch or run to the next cool location. So we've played around with it. I think there's a lot more we could do. I think also being more, maybe creating more of like a structured campaign around it versus just one-off shots. The other thing too is like, that's really cool and looks cool, but does it actually resonate with your audience? I think for us, it was, at the time I was like, oh, there's this camping audience and there's all these people who are going to be outdoors working out. And we actually kind of tested some of those ads and they didn't perform as well as other audience groups. So it's finding that balance of like, hey, this is really cool and crazy and otherworldly, but is it do people actually care about it who are going to buy this?
Yeah, I would think that an advertisement like that is more of like an attention grabber, right? So it's like, oh, I'm scrolling and then I see some guy working out in arches. Then I'm like, what is that product? And if I'm not interested in fitness, then I'm not going to convert. But if I am, maybe then your kind of company just comes on my radar. So I don't know. I don't know too much about advertising, but that's the way I would think about it versus if you have like a very clear value proposition based ad, then that might convert higher just because you know exactly like what the product is right away, right?
Yeah, and it goes back to this viral thing, right? Like every company I've worked at, every team CEO you talk to wants their viral moment. And it's
Yeah,
actually happened. I've seen a lot of talk about this the past few weeks about Solo Stove and their viral campaign
me
with
too.
Snoop Dogg, who quit smoking, right? And it was all about the quit smoking was actually in relation to their Solo Stove. Their CEO got fired because they didn't see an immediate impact, but you can't create a viral moment just to rely on sales. Like Red Bull, if anybody's proven this for the past 20 years, it's Red Bull, because even though they're creating these viral moments, a lot of times it's not creating immediate Red Bull sales. But everybody thinks of Red Bull whenever they're out there that, hey, the best, craziest athletes and are doing the best things and have Red Bull on their helmet. And so you have to think of these viral moments less as sale producers and having immediate impact and more as like brand builders and how you want to see people, think and feel about your brand. Or maybe, a year later, they actually need to buy a Solo Stove and they think to themselves, oh yeah, Snoop Dogg. I love Snoop Dogg. I saw his recent movie. I'm gonna consider purchasing a Solo Stove. And so when we do think about, hey, creating these viral hits, a lot of times you're not going to see it impact like our crowdfund, for instance. But hey, maybe 2 years from now, somebody thinks, is like, oh, I saw this crazy thing xplate's doing. I actually need an at-home fitness product. Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I've been seeing all of that conversation around Solo Stove as well. And there's a lot of people who are kind of like in hindsight saying a lot of stuff like, oh, this was so obvious that this was going to fail. And it's like, you probably didn't, you're probably just saying that with hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight. Um, but these last few questions, we'll just do them rapid fire.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that keeps you up at night about this business?
Whether people want it. I think the thing we learned too with the pre-sale is you're going to get we at least have gotten so much positive feedback. We've had people who are, institutional investors. We've had, big names in the fitness space be like, I love it. This is super cool. You guys created an awesome thing. But then when went out to do the pre-sale, a lot of people are like, oh, but I don't want to buy it. Oh, I love what you guys built. I think it's a really cool idea, but I don't need it. And so it's I fear that I don't want to become the next Segway where everybody loved the Segway. It was on every news station. you know, every big investor, Steve Jobs had one, he invested in it. But then at the end of the day, no one wanted to buy it. And it turned into a kind of a joke seeing Segway tours. So that's what I'm fearful of most is are people actually going to buy it, even though they all talk about how cool it is?
And then what's been your biggest learning thus far as an entrepreneur?
Everything takes twice as long as you think it's going to take, maybe 10 times as long. It especially when you're creating a consumer product, a hard product, manufactured product, it's tough. It's really difficult to make something and then to scale that in an economy where there's immediate demand, where when there's demand, there's an immediate expectation that they can have it now. The Amazon effect has changed everything when it comes to selling consumer product. And so I've worked at startups where it's all about selling a service or selling a software, and you can just move so fast and so quickly and iterate overnight. But when you're selling a product that has to be manufactured, it has to be shipped overseas, it has to then be fulfilled and packaged, it takes time, and it's really difficult when you don't have money and resources. So it's going to take longer than you think, and it's okay.
And what's been the hardest part so far about being an entrepreneur?
I think the unexpectedness, the uncertainty, I should say. There's no playbook. Everybody has a different answer. Everybody has a different story, and you kind of have to forge your own through testing, learning, failing. And failing, while we talk about it as being this grandiose thing you need to do, and it's so good nowadays, it still sucks when you fail. It's not fun to admit you failed. It's not fun when you go out and you try something and it doesn't work, when you send out something incorrectly. But at the end of the day, no one's going to remember it a month from now or even a couple of days from now. So it's nobody knows what's going to happen. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and you just got to learn.
And
Try.
what's been the most rewarding part?
For us, it was that first sale, seeing somebody put down their hard-earned cash for something that you created, and you put, your name behind. I think that's the coolest thing in the world, is to see something you do that's worth money, and it's not being paid to you through a salary through another company. It's your hard-earned work. Your hard work, is that money's going straight to you and probably going to go somewhere else, right? And invest in something else in the company, but it goes into your wallet at the end of the day, that you can't see, you can't experience anywhere else.
And what does success look like for you with this business over the long term?
I think creating a sustainable business where we can sell the product 24/7 and we can fulfill it in a fast manner. I think, given the complexity of our manufacturing, the complexity of the product, being able to, if we can fulfill this in less than a week, that would be just a dream, right? That's the goal, is to be able to have somebody buy it at midnight and then have it in their midnight on a Monday, and then have it in their home gym by Friday. That to me would be the coolest thing to say, is we have a sustainable, well-oiled machine where it's, people are buying, getting it, and we can compete with the largest competitors like Bowflex.
And what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
It's going to cost. It's going to cost more than you think. I think we really underestimated how much it costs to start a business. My dad told me, he was like, there's a lot of people out there who won't work with you unless you have 100K in the bank, and we did not have 100K in the bank. And it's it just adds up. Little things add up here and there: services, subscriptions, contractors, freelancers, whatever it is. There's always something that you have to pay for, and that you need more money for. And so I think, going in, I wish I'd known that we were going to need a lot more money, because we probably would have done a much larger family and friends raise earlier on.
And then what advice do you have for either aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are just starting out on their journeys?
I like to tell people, and it's so funny because there's so many people concerned about having a 9-to-5 job and starting your own business on the side, or being involved in a side hustle. But just by doing this, you learn so much that no company or school could ever teach you. You could take every entrepreneurship class in the world. You can work under every venture capital fund, and you still won't learn the skills it takes to create a business, to take an idea and actually sell that idea, and, take the risks that are involved in going out there and putting yourself out there and putting your name on something and collecting money for it, and then having to go and return something that people actually want and is valuable. Nothing can teach you that until you do it. And I think that's one of the things that inspired me to also want to start a business, is to learn and to have those skills, and to say, hey, even if I failed, I can go back years from now and say, we did it. I took that risk. I did it. I learned, and it'll impact the rest of my life.
And is there maybe one mistake that you made or your team made that you really learned from?
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes. I think the one core mistake, I think, is, here's a good way to put it. I think a big mistake is the pursuit of perfection. I think we held ourselves back a lot because we wanted to come across looking extremely buttoned up and like we knew everything we were talking about. And at the end of the day, we don't know everything we're talking about. I may be a seasoned marketer, but there's a lot of marketing skills I don't have, or I didn't have before this, that I've had to learn or had to pick up. And so I think that biggest mistake is holding yourself back out of fear of not looking perfect, out of fear of it not being perfect. Taking that risk requires imperfection, and out of imperfection comes, getting closer to perfection. I don't think anyone ever achieves perfection, but you can at least improve and get to a better place. And so I think not holding yourself back out of fear of being perfect is a mistake we made earlier on.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It was fun.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it as always.
See you, bro.
See you, man.
Bye.